تحياتي متابعينا، أهلا وسهلا فيكم بحلقة جديدة وخاصة من برنامج يلا. بحلقة اليوم رح نسلط الضوء على شخصية إيرانية لها وزن وتاريخ ويراها الكثيرون داخل إيران وخارجها كشخصية قد يكون لها دور بارز في مستقبل إيران. رحبوا معي بولي العهد الإيراني الأمير رضا بهلوي، وسنناقش مع الأمير رضا بهلوي المظاهرات والحراك المستمر في إيران، ابتداء من حراك امرأة حياة وحرية، كما ورؤيته للميليشيات المتطرفة التابعة للنظام الإيراني ودور المخرب في المنطقة، وهجمات 7 أكتوبر الإرهابية من قبل حماس على إسرائيل، والمواجهات الحالية مع ميليشيا الحوثيين، ورؤيته للسلام بين إسرائيل وإيران المستقبلية. كما سنتحدث عن تطلعات الشعب الإيراني لمستقبل ومرحلة ما بعد نظام خامنئي. لمعرفة كل هذه التفاصيل تابعونا في هذا اللقاء الخاص من برنامج يلا. We saw what Hamas did in Israel on October 7th, horrible massacre. Hezbollah is increasing its attacks from Lebanon. The Houthis are attacking American targets and international commercial ships in the Red Sea. The United States and Britain have been confronting the Houthis, responding to their attacks. How do you see this ongoing development in the region?
Well, these are all responses to the symptoms. Whether you are countering the Houthis because of threatening commercial traffic, whether Israel has to defend itself versus an aggression by Hamas. At the end of the day, these are, again, exactly what the regime is trying to push: proxy wars, so that itself remains still unchallenged. I remember in an interview I gave to some French magazine 40 years ago, I was still in Morocco at the time. And I used the analogy of saying that, you know, world governments are reacting of dispatching their fire trucks to put out a fire somewhere. But nobody is after the arsonist. If you look at it this way, who has been lighting these fires all along?
Exactly.
There is a source, but the source that has a necessity of doing what it's doing, it's not just coincidental. It's part and parcels of their strategy for survival, by depending on regional turmoil to maintain repression at home and intervention abroad. The only way to reverse that process is for this regime to no longer be there. It's as simple as that.
From watching the news today, it's probably hard for people in the MENA region to believe that Iran and Israel were not always at war. In fact, it's the opposite. 2,500 years ago, there were the days of Cyrus the Great, who liberated the Jews and helped them rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. In your remarks to a group in Washington, you said,
"There is a temple that needs to be rebuilt. Iran is our temple. Stand with us."
What did you mean, and how can all decent people stand with the people of Iran today? What do you say to them?
I think Jews and Persians understand at least 25 centuries of a biblical relationship that the two nations has had. On the other hand, very important for everyone to understand is that, and as I was talking to the average Israeli citizen during my stay in Tel Aviv, and also as a result of that and the reactions that Iranians showed in Iran about the fact that not only we don't hate each other, but we need each other and we believe in each other. The amount of messaging that I've seen, again on social media, by Israeli citizens and Iranian citizens, and particularly the reaction that Iranians showed in Iran after the Hamas attack on Israel, the writing is on the wall. And what I'm saying is that just as much as maybe 25 centuries ago, that basis was established in our national psyche today, at the hype of the conflicts, at the hype of what the regime is doing, that hasn't been able to deter people. Years ago, when the reform movement in Iran had just started, young Iranians, and you see it even today, as the regime has placed the American flag and the Israeli flag at the entrance of
universities,
what have you, how people on purpose try to bypass and not step on it. These are all clear indication that unlike what Khamenei and his clique are thinking, the Iranian people are not thinking that way. But it's important for the world to understand that. So not only the average American or Frenchman or German understand that, but their politicians understand that. How different this regime is from the thinking of its own citizenry.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that the Iranian regime seems to be very terrified from is peace. And we saw the Abraham Accords, how they reversed decades of hostility between several Arab countries and Israel, and started a very powerful momentum towards peace and prosperity in all these countries involved. There's a lot of talks, of course, we've heard of it, about the Cyrus Accords, which is a similar peace between Israel and a future secular democratic Iran. How possible do you see this happening? Or is it a wishful thinking?
I proposed it during my press conference in Tel Aviv, that hopefully as an upgrade to the existing Abraham Accords, Iran will be also a key partner, and we can elevate it to the Cyrus Accord. Look, it's very simple. If you look at the axis of resistance, which is basically Tehran and Damascus right now, that impeaches citizens of those countries to have the same opportunities that today you find in the UAE or in Saudis or elsewhere as a result of this cooperation. I mean, which world do they want to belong to and be able to participate in? I mean, it's so clear when you think of that. And I'm glad that many leaders in the Arab world understood that yesterday's conflict needs to change to a different dimension. I'm not saying in the middle of all this the Palestinian issue should be forgotten. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. But a chance for real peace cannot exist as long as you have chief antagonists that, as you best said it yourself, don't want peace. The Islamic regime doesn't want peace. Hezbollah doesn't want peace. Hamas doesn't want peace. So as long as these threats to peace exist, we cannot have stability and real cooperation. Unfortunately, Iran today is kept hostage by the regime that promotes all this conflict. Our liberation is not just our liberation. It's also an end of all these conflicts and threats to other countries. And that can only be conducive to a much brighter and better future.
You mentioned it a couple of times now today. You made a historical visit to Israel with your wife. You were the most prominent Iranian to ever visit the Jewish state. Can you tell us what were your impressions and what kind of impact did this visit have on you?
Well, first of all, it made it very clear, not just to Israeli officials, but I think average Israeli citizens, of what difference it will be without the current regime in Iran, and instead a government that really seeks the best interests of its nation, to really look at Israel as a strategic partner as opposed to an enemy that needs to be wiped off from the map, which is the mindset of the regime.
Yes.
And again, that's the discussions that I also had with specialists in the water management issues and other things, and various companies that can bring in the best possible technologies that Iran could be faced in terms of challenges that we need to do in terms of our agriculture or other issues. Israel has a lot to offer. I remember with my wife, we stopped at a little cafe, and people would come in, step forward, to take selfies and pictures, and they say, we're so happy you're in our country. We can only hope to have the best relationship in the future. When you hear that from the average citizen,
yes,
unscripted, with no calculation beyond an honest opinion, that's a great encouragement. And I bet you have the exact similar thing somewhere in Iran wanting to say that. Exactly. And once you put these people together on a common path, hey, the sky is the limit. It's the beginning of a new era, and I hope that we are doing our part in bringing this to a direction of sooner rather than later.
I just want to say that even though we have always gotten a lot of kindness from the Iranian Jewish community, we did not quite know what to expect in Israel itself. And I keep feeling like a lot of the people had all of these feelings bottled because they didn't have anyone to really show it to, because they have also come here from Iran and they made new lives for themselves. But suddenly it's like they burst. It was like a bursting of they didn't know what to do. People crying, sweating, hugging. It was everything was like bursting out of them. And then for us, I told my husband, he knows I don't cry easily, but I've cried so much on this trip because kindness, people's kindness. both of us, when somebody's very loving and kind and energy is coming like that, it touches your heart, and then you cry. It's not from sadness. It's almost like you wish that everybody could always feel this love and exchange this love, you know.
گفتی به من قصه نخواب میرم و برمیگردم همسفر پرستوها میشم و برمیگردم.
I'm inspired by.
That's a good word, inspiration.
Yeah, it's been for me very inspiring, very inspiring.
I wanted to congratulate you for your daughter Iman's recent engagement.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
Well, great. I mean, I think, one of them had to commit to tie the knot at some point, so my wife and I could graduate to our next chapter in life of becoming grandparents. You know, it's a phase in life that I guess every parent ultimately looks forward to, and we hope they will have a very good life together as a husband and wife.
What's your advice to the young couple?
My best advice, not just to my daughter and her fiancé, but I would say to any person is, look, a young couple should first and foremost ultimately hear each other and make the ultimate decisions for themselves. Don't let others dictate or live their lives for them. Mm-hmm. That's the way I brought up my daughters together with my wife. We said, we are here to help you make the best decisions, but at the end, you have to live your life for yourselves. Mm-hmm. We're not going to tell you how to live your life. So that should bring an element of independence, but also confidence. And I think that confidence is ultimately the relationship between people who can only find ultimate trust in one another. That, I think, is what firms up a relationship of a couple. Because the external challenges will be a lot, but you don't want to allow an internal conflict to exist. That's the most important thing. So learn to prioritize.
The Nowruz holiday is coming soon, and it's a holiday about hope. It means the new day. What are you hopeful about? When you use the term hope, I've been saying lately to my compatriots that we need to shift the pendulum from having hope to have belief. It's one thing to have hope. It's a projection. But having belief means that you can actually do it. You have to really believe that it can be done. And in that sense, of course, Nowruz is a chance to renew. It's a part of the tradition and the culture. But I think, given the circumstances of our country, it's important that now we move beyond hope. We have to actually have belief that it can be done. Mm-hmm. When I think of the civil rights movement in the US and what Martin Luther King ended up doing, it was a dream, as he said. I have a dream. Mm-hmm. But at some point, they had the belief that they can actually get it done. Final word from you to our young audience watching us all over the Middle East and, of course, in Iran.
Talk to one another. Be aware of each other. See that at the end we have so much more commonality of interest than differences of culture or tradition or what have you. There's so much commonality that I think is what will cement for a long time to come our collective futures. But it all starts by communicating, by growing outside the box and not thinking ourselves only as Saudis or Jordanians or Egyptians or Iranians or Syrians, but at the end, especially starting at least from a regional standpoint, that we have so much commonality of interest. It will be important to be able to have that dialogue and exchange. Because if people to people, which ultimately strengthens people power, you actually make the job of your governments easier to make it happen, because they see that the desire and will is there. And that's a very important message. At the end of the day, what forces decision makers to take positions are their electors or public opinion.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us on the Yalla Show.
Thank you so much. And again, I hope we'll have future opportunities to talk some more about this.
Absolutely. 1, 2, 3.
Yalla!
Yalla!